Thank you, Mark. Who's ever had a salad? Who's ever had a fast food salad? Yeah, I've had two. I don't know about your experience, but fast food salads, they're not very memorable. They have the right content. They have the lettuce, the token cherry tomato, and some onion. But they don't leave you feeling satisfied. They don't leave you feeling, wow, I must go back there again for another salad from McDonald's. They're not very memorable. Have you ever sat through a presentation that was like a salad? A bit limp, boring. Has anybody sat through that? Not that you would ever give them, but have you ever sat through them? Okay. So there's a lot of ingredients you can add, just like your salad, to your presentation that can really make it pop, really make it memorable, and that people will be talking about it days later. And that's exactly what you want with your message. You want your message to get across to your audience, to make that connection, and so they'll think, oh, I'd like to come back and hear that speaker again, or I like what they had to say, just like a good salad. So what we want to do today is we want to give you the right ingredients so you have a really salad that pops, so that you have a presentation that really pops. Would that be of interest to anybody? Okay. Warm enough. Let's see if we get a bit more. Okay. That's what we're going to work on. There's some ingredients to a presentation, speech. I'll use presentation, I'll use the word speech. There are some ingredients that you need. Content, structure, and delivery. Content and structure is in a different workshop that I do. Tonight, it's all about delivery. And we're going to look at a few aspects of delivery. We're going to look at a little bit on words. We're going to look at pause, gestures, and then vocal modulation. That's a nice workshop. And this is very much interactive, so there will be lots of opportunity to come up here, try them out, have a go, see how it goes for you. And tell me, has anybody ever gone to the movies? Okay, fantastic. And tell me, why would you go to the movies?
Be entertained.
Entertained. What else? Great answer, Mark. Relax. Escape, absolutely.
Eat popcorn.
Oh, absolutely. I love popcorn at the movies. Any other reasons why you might go to the movies? Have fun. Okay. So we all love going to the movies, and it is an escape. I love it when you go through those doors and like you leave your own reality outside. You go through, you get the smell of popcorn, and the olden cinemas, like you come up and there'll be those red curtains. I think the Stella have revitalised their place and they've got the red curtains. And you sat back in your seat waiting to enter the world of the movie you went to see. We sit back and we're relaxing and we're taken away. And it can be, you can decide in advance if it's going to be funny, romantic, scary. So you decide in advance where you want your emotions to go at the movies. Storytelling is very similar, and storytelling is a vital part of presentations. Even when you give work presentations, if you make that connection with your audience through storytelling, if you evoke emotion, you awaken thought. And that's exactly what you want to do with your audience. You want your audience to think, wow, what is it that he's talking about? I want more of that. And so with a story, you evoke emotion, your audience relax. They're in that place where they're quite receptive to what it is you want to say. So storytelling is vitally important, not just in Toastmasters, but in work and presentations. Come on in. Caroline.
I'm so sorry.
Come on in, this is Caroline. We can make introductions at the break. Grab a seat. So storytelling is vitally important for any presentation. Get people into your presentation. So I'm going to give you the beginning of two beginnings to one story. And I want you to notice the difference. It's a very short intro to them. So the first introduction is, I woke up. I went down to the kitchen to where there was buns cooking. It was Christmas morning. Now the next introduction. I awoke to the sound of snow crunching under a heavy boot. As I looked out through the curtains, the piercing light blinded me. I walked down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was welcomed with the aroma of cinnamon buns. It was Christmas morning. Did you notice anything between the first and second? They gave you the same information, but what was different?
The one was more details.
Okay, what type of details?
Your eyes,
Senses.
your sight, your senses. Yeah.
Senses. People take in information through different ways. They've got a preference. So some people like visuals. Some people like the sound of things. Some people like the feelings. And if you can use more description in your presentations, again, you're going to evoke emotion and awaken thought. You want to get that. Get your audience to connect. Now, I'll give you a tip. The strongest one is olfactory. So if you smell. So if you like, even now when I make granola, the smell of cinnamon brings me right back to childhood when my mother used to make the Christmas cakes. I'm back there in the kitchen when Mom's making the cakes. Like bread baking. I think that's why they use it for selling houses, isn't it? Sense of being homely. Get the bread baking. So if you can use those types of descriptions in your presentations that are positive, your audience is going to relax even more into what you're saying, and they're going to be even more receptive to what it is you're saying. So we have, I call the sofa, relaxing into the sofa. So let's go forward. So we have sight, olfactory, feeling, and auditory. If you can get descriptions with these in your presentations. Again, you're just looking to evoke that emotion, make that connection. So we're going to start off with a little exercise. I want you to get into groups of 3 or 5, but not 4. And we're going to have a round robin. Let me explain this, what we're going to do.
You're in the best place you can go. Yeah.
How did you find that? Was any of the emotions difficult or any of the senses difficult? All easy?
Sight was the hardest.
Was it? Yeah. Right.
I found I was quite matter of fact when I was saying I saw this and then I saw that.
Okay.
I wasn't being descriptive enough.
Right.
You warm up to it.
You get into it again.
You get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the improvisation is kind of difficult sometimes. Like you
Yeah.
need to improvise all the time, and sometimes you get stuck with some words.
Okay. But you got to pick some words off the sheet and use them.
Yeah.
Everyone. Akhlil? Amanda? Okay. Yeah, it's not exhaustive, but there's quite a few there. Have fun with them. So we move on then to pause. The power of the pause in a presentation. There's a few reasons why you would pause. If you're making a point, so you could be going on through your presentation, and if you want to make a point, you really want your message to pop, to stand out. So take a moment, pause before you deliver it. Deliver your message, even take another little pause, and then move on with your presentation. If you want your audience to reflect on something, so you've said something and you really want them to reflect on it. How are they about it? Take a moment. So you've said something, and just take a moment and just let everybody sit with that thought. So you'd pause for that as well. With your audience, it's a relationship, it's a conversation. So if you ask a question of your audience, give them time to answer it. So if I said, have you ever been to Cork? You might put up your hand because you see my hand up, but I'll give you a moment just to nod or to even to answer it yourself. If I ask you a question, I'll move straight on. It's really rude. You wouldn't do that in a conversation. And if I do it in a presentation, you guys will decide then, you're not even going to engage with me. You're not going to answer me mentally. So be respectful of your audience and make that conversation happen. And so pause is really effective in presentations. So if we move on then to body language, gestures and that. And they say that your words are for your ears, your audience's ears, and your body language is for their eyes. And so you're adding to your presentation when you use body language. We're going to go through some of the aspects of body language. What we're going to look at is that it reinforces the word, it paints a picture, and it also guides your audience as to where you're going. So a few do's and don'ts and a few what to do. So the hands. What do you do with your hands? Everybody's always asking, what do you do with my hands? Some people put them behind their back. It's a very, very formal. It's not really. Or they put them in their pockets. No, don't put your hands in your pockets, because you'll find something there to jingle with. There'll be now a coin there or keys, and they'll be jingling away. So keep your hands out. And if you have a flicker, do put it down from time to time so your hands are free. In some cultures, they don't like seeing your armpits, so don't be going around waving like this and say, "Yay, it's a great time, Mark, let's do this." It gets quite exhausting anyway. If you need to point up there, use your whole hand, right? Never your finger. So if you want to just single out somebody like Keith in the audience, I might do this to him, but I wouldn't do that. With your hands, the nicest gesture is actually this one. It's the easiest gesture. It's not offensive. It's almost beseeching your audience to, hey, listen to me, take on board what I have to say. There's no strings here. That's a nice one. And so for body language, you use it to just really emphasize what you're saying. Now, depending on the size of your audience, if this size, if I have my hands about here, that's okay, you can all see it. For bigger audiences, I really need to make my gestures pretty big. Not like, but like, I just need to make them a bit bigger so you can all see them. So do bear in mind what size audience you're talking to, how big you need to make your gestures. If you move on then to your facial expressions, and most people are going to be looking at you in the face at some stage. And so how your face looks has to match what you're saying. So if I said, "I'm really excited to be here, Keith," you're going, "Jesus, I don't trust her." It's not matching. So you want to be certain that what you say matches your face. And go on to the most important, apart from the smile, but the most important gesture on the face is the eyes. And the eyes is what connect you with your audience. You'll engage with your audience through your eyes, and it'll also build up trust. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody, and like one-on-one, and they're looking at the ground? Like if Mark is talking to me and I'm just looking down, how do you feel, Mark?
Not great.
Not great. Or Keith, if I was you're talking to me and I just kept looking over your head, how would you feel?
Feel like you're not interested in.
Not interested, yeah. So when you're presenting, it's the very same. If you're looking at the ground, or you're looking at your notes, or you're looking over somebody's head, your audience are going to say, they're not interested. They can't make that connection with you. Now, I know when we all start out speaking, we're looking at our notes, or we're looking at the ground. We don't want to look out there. If we look out there, you guys are going to put me off speaking. So when you start speaking, it's sort of all about you, isn't it? How I'm going to get through this. Can I remember this? But actually, the most important person in the room is your audience, how they are taking on board what you're saying. Are they getting your message? Are they making that valuable connection with you? And so your eyes should be in this direction. And so a lot of speakers realize that I need to be looking in that direction. But again, I don't want you guys to put me off, so I'll find a spot at the end of the room and I'll stare at that. And you guys don't even matter. I'm just going to talk to that spot down there. It's not very nice, Keith, is it? Somebody doesn't make eye contact. And then the more informed of us think, okay, we need to be looking at these guys out here. And would you believe it, 10% of speakers look at their audience? Pretty small. But then they think, okay, how am I going to look at them all? So they'll do the wiper effect. They'll start here and they'll go, look at him for a minute, and they go all the way over here. They'll spot D, and then they go all the way back. And they'll do this. So they're what not to do. So what do we need to do when it comes to eye contact? When you come up here first, you're going to stand, settle, and of course, smile. And as you're smiling, take a moment and see who's smiling back at you. Yes. So I'm going to start with the people who are smiling back at me. And you want to look at people for a thought or two, about 5 to 10 seconds, any more and it gets a bit creepy. So about 5 seconds to 10 seconds. And I might look at Mark a bit for a moment, and I'm talking and I've got a thought going. And then I'll just move off to the other side of the room, and I might spot D, who's not interested in me at all. And I'll connect with D, and then I'll go down the back, and I'll move it around. But I'm looking to shift my gaze every 5 to 10 seconds, make the eye contact, move off. Now, if your audience member actually doesn't like you looking at them, that's okay. They'll just look away, and you can move on to somebody else. Now, if you're staring them out for more than 10 seconds, they're going to think you're a bit funny, so don't do that long. So we're going to move on to another little exercise. I'm going to ask you to come up here and speak for a minute. And in that minute, the idea is that you should make eye contact with at least 6 people. So the audience, what I want you to do is, when the speaker has made eye contact with you, raise your hand. So that's a bit of a flag, a visual for the speaker. You know you've made eye contact. When the speaker breaks eye contact, just lower your hand. So from the speaker's perspective, you want to get 6 hands up in the minute. We did that little exercise earlier about the round robin, so you have material here to work on. So you can all put your hand up, or I can just pick you. Who wants to go first? How did you find that? From the audience perspective, when the speaker was looking at you, was it long enough? No. Short. It was short. So the speakers, did you find it challenging looking at somebody for 5 seconds? It was. Did anybody manage, or did anybody feel in the audience that somebody looked at them for 5 seconds? No. Who wants to try it again? Or not again, but somebody else. And really, James, for 5 seconds, we're looking for good 5 seconds. How did that feel? How did that feel for you to watch somebody for? Good. Did anybody feel that it was for about 5 seconds or longer than before? Okay, you did. And how did that feel for you in making that gaze? So it felt okay.
You feel more engaged with what's being said.
Okay. So there's a bit of feedback there, is that you look that bit longer, that it's okay, you're not staring them out of it, and they make that connection. That looking for a few seconds, and I noticed that as soon as you'd look for a few seconds, when the person acknowledged it, they were gone. The speaker was gone. Because your hand was going like this, Keith, which is a good indication. So it's maybe look to extend that, to actually make that eye contact, make that connection. It's okay. And then move on. Fantastic. So we're going to move on to movement. When do you use movement? Actually, I've got it up on the board now. You could have just shouted out actions. If your speech or presentation calls for actions. So if I'm going to the hospital and I'm walking, let's put in the walk. We have lots of nervous energy, so use it when you can with your movement. So the presentation, actions are going to call for movement. If you have a timeline, now at work presentations, you might start a project here and then 6 weeks later. Then transitioning, you're going to move to 6 weeks later. Talk about the project. Then at the end of the project, and you're moving here. Now there's a reason why I'm moving this way. In the West, we write left to right. So if you're looking to do progress, or you're doing a presentation on progress, you're going to start here, and you're going to move this way for progress. And you can call back to the beginning of the project. Or if you're talking about age or speech, when I was younger, and you've given an example, when I was younger, you can point there. Now, if you're to give a presentation in the Middle East, you'd flip it around, and you'd be starting over here and working this way. So you need to have what you say congruent with how the audience is going to read it. Now, if you messed it up, or you weren't aware of this, the audience isn't going to know, but what they'll think is, something about that just didn't sit right with me. So if they're used to doing, the reading, and they're going from here to there, make your presentation from here to there. Does that make sense, everyone? Now, if you're doing more staging, that's slightly different. But if it's timelining, this is the way it should go. So like when I spoke about the salads, the McDonald's salad, it was here. The progression was here. When I spoke about the day in Christmas, and the bad one was here, hopefully the progress was over here. And so you're making everything match. So the psychology behind that is your audience sees that it makes sense. And that builds up trust, connection, and engagement. And that's what you want with your audience. If you're in China now, okay, then you start moving back. It goes a little bit, you sort of move more this way or forward, lads. Okay, I'll talk to you about stage choreography. Stage choreography. This is like you've got a graphic square organizer here on the ground, and how are you going to work it? You've written your speech, and you have different sections of your speech. You might talk about when you were younger and you're going to the hospital, so this is my hospital. I might talk about home being here, or I might actually talk about school being over this way. So these are my areas. I've mapped it out. I might even throw in a hologram of a doctor. And so let's say I go over here, the doctor. If I was a kid, I'm looking up at the doctor. Actually, I'm still looking up at the doctor. I'm so small. Let's see what I did. I actually stepped out of my story. This is your story space. And if I want to address the audience, I step out of it and address it, and then I come back into my story. So there I was explaining something, and I stepped out to show you that. Okay, got that. So we have, here's the hospital. We've got the hologram. I'm looking up to a doctor. Or if you're an adult, you're talking to a child. Look down. Make it as real as you can for the audience. Really paint the picture for them. So I might talk about as a child going to the doctor, going to the hospital, being back home. Now if I'm talking about, and I've said school's over here, and I say to you a few weeks later, I went back to the hospital. Oh, you didn't. The hospital's over there. Right? So make sure that you don't walk all over your staging. Decide where things are and then use them accordingly. So that'll make the difference between using staging and a timeline. Now I've seen people and they've talked about going to a funeral, burying good old Uncle John. And John was buried over here. And then they went off and they did various bits and they then celebrated Uncle John's life. And they had parties and they did lots of storytelling because that's what he liked. And they were dancing here. Dancing all over for Uncle John's grave. Now, it just, a little bit of sensitivity to it as well would be nice, but they probably weren't even aware of that. So do your staging, work it, move, so it actually makes a lot of sense. If I was talking about when I went back to the hospital for my next appointment, all I have to do is point to it. And you guys know that's the hospital. Or, school, you can point. Once you've set them up, your audience, they're really clever. They'll work it out and you can point to it. You start walking all over your stage, they're just going to go, oh, what's going on here? So that just brings clarity, more connection. Any questions around that? Everybody okay about that?
About movements, like your suggestion is that we have to plan our movements.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
It was a kind of natural thing. Like I thought it was kind of natural.
Well, a presentation is never sort of natural because it's not happening in the moment. You've planned your presentation.
Also, when you raise your hand or when you...
Raising a hand is getting the audience engagement as well.
It has to look natural, I think.
It's to look natural. It's to look natural. Yes, to appear natural. Yeah, because giving a presentation, there's nothing natural about this, is there? Because you're relating a story that may or may not have happened before. And if you're relating it to you at the moment, you can be really natural. But then you're staging it. You need to then stage in the actions. You'll probably find that when you've done it a few times, they do come naturally to you. But it is a case of putting them in there, standing here and just delivering a speech and not using gestures or not moving. Your audience are going to fall asleep. So it's using it appropriately. Yes?
What about, I have a problem because I have stories going from the past up to the present.
Lovely.
And there is all that sense that it's all going to get mixed up, you know what I mean? Have you any advice?
So if there's any dialogue there, what I'd also suggest is that people always have a challenge with dialogue. How do you, be the other person? Do you sort of do this and do this? A way around that is, if you can change the pitch a bit, but add in the person you're talking to in the dialogue. So if it's your dad talking to Bobby, Bobby, how are you doing when you did that? And Dad, well, that's what he's your dad. This is what he did. So you mention the person you're talking to in the dialogue, so then we all know who's doing the talking. If I say stage it into the 3 time zones, because that's what you're doing. You've broken it into time more than just a speech. Brilliant. Okay. And that's our break. We'll have a cup of coffee now. Just chat to your neighbour and just recap on what you've picked up from the first session. How did you find that, the first half? What did you pick up? Just throw out some... What did you pick up?
Eye contact.
Eye contact.
5 seconds.
5 seconds, great. Senses tell story. Anything else? Fantastic.
Space on the,
Space.
space
Did you feel that that's something you could use, that you could work on?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Pause. I love the pause. Yes. Super. Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. So we'll move on to the first exercise. So the idea is that the idea of this is for you to come up, practice your descriptive words. Yeah. Practice your descriptive words, your eye contact, and your body gestures. And so we're going to have 5 people up here who haven't been up yet. Yeah, this is the space to give it a go. Try your hand at it. Throw caution to the wind. We're all friends. We've had a cup of coffee together. Thank you for everyone who participated. Really appreciate that. We're going to move on to vocal variety. So we're looking at the tempo, volume, and pitch. And so the tempo has all got to do with speed. Speed. Yes, I think speed was very much part of the few speeches I started off with. I just wanted to get through them as quickly as possible. Take a breath, move through as quick as you can, finish and take another breath. So you're looking at the tempo, the speed. You know, when you're excited, you might be really talking like this, and it was fantastic, and we're really, the high energies are over here. And then if you want to go and talk about something sad, poignant, you might slow it down. Or again, if you want the message to just sit a bit longer, you might really slow it down. Let your audience really soak in what I'm saying before they nod off. So it's that delicate balance. And so you want to look at the tempo. The other thing with the tempo is if there's actually other speakers, it may not be a Toastmaster event, it could be a working event, and other speakers before you, see where they are pitching their tempo. So if they're really high energy, you want to come on with a bit of energy as well, and then bring the speech wherever you need it to go. Or the other thing is, if the last speaker is really slow or boring, we've all seen those, you might want to get your audience to even just, you want to liven it up a bit, wake them up. So you might come out with something a bit punchy to wake them up, or get to a quick activity might do that for you. So the pitch, you want to change it light and shade, dark. You want to just change it up for the whole presentation. You do not want to be monotone all the way through. And with the volume, I'm hoping that Eugene can hear me down the back and Caroline. So you want to make it that the people at the back row can hear you, and you're pitching there. You want to just project your voice down the back so they hear you. So if the room was any bigger than this, you might say, do you know what, I need a mic, so you're not shouting at people. So that's the volume. And then we're looking at pitch. You might change the pitch. Did I cover pitch? Tempo, volume, and pitch. So if you are talking about, again, the different people, dialogue, you might change it up and down. So there are ways of just making it a bit more interesting to your audience when it comes to your vocal variety. There's another little exercise. Can everybody read that screen? Okay. So we're looking at emotion. How do you get emotion across? Through what you're saying. And that phrase isn't very emotive unless you add the emotion to it. And so we're going to have people coming up here, and I'm going to give you a piece of paper with an emotion on it. And I'd like you to say that phrase with that emotion. Don't tell us. And us as an audience have to guess how you're saying it. Caroline, you look like you're really interested in this. Those in when you're looking to elicit that emotion in your presentations. And with your audience, what you want to do is you want to make that connection with them. And there's various ways of doing that. There's the you-focused check-in. And I asked earlier, have you been to Cork? Or have you ever had a salad? And my question is directed at one person. I don't say, how many people here have eaten a salad? I say, have you eaten a salad? So it sounds like I'm being more personal to you, rather than I'm asking the whole room. And so you take it on board that it is more personal. So you-focused questions are really helpful. So when you have a question in your speech to the audience, make it you-focused. Because we all say, how many people, make it you. Have you ever been to Cork? Have you ever eaten a salad? That type of thing. And then put your audience in your scene. So in my speeches, I usually try and get the audience in. So one of my speeches, I talk about how my teacher put me off public speaking. She humiliated me. And what I tend to say is, if you'd have been there, if you'd been in that classroom, you would have seen Mrs. Clark hold me up the top of the room and get me to speak to the class. So I bring you into my speech by saying, if you were there. Try and do that, because if your audience can be in there with you, they've more of a vested interest in the presentation or the speech. It's more a part of them that you're making them part of it with you. Does that make sense? Now, finish your sentence. If you have a presentation or speech, you might have a keyword. One of my phrases is, if you evoke emotion, you awaken. Somebody remember? Thought. I didn't mean to bring that through my presentation and I forgot all about it. But if I'd said this 4 or 5 times, towards the end, if I said to you, when you evoke emotion, you awaken thought, and you'd answer me back. And by that stage, you would know that I wanted responses, because when I'd be asking you a question, I'd give a pause, I'd be nodding along with you, and so we would have built up that type of conversation. Another way is to discuss and brief, and I did that with you. After the break, I asked you to discuss amongst yourselves and then come back and debrief. If I had said to you when you're sitting down, tell me what you got out of the first half, I might have put you under pressure and you may not have answered it. However, since you sort of spoke to your neighbour about it, you'd already chatted, and then you're more likely to throw up suggestions. And what that also does is it gets them to almost confirm what you did in the first half and to buy into what you're suggesting they should do. So that's more of the psychology behind it. Does that make sense? To do that. So use the discuss and debrief. And the last one is activity. So I did lots of activities here. And the idea of that is to keep you engaged. Like, so every about 7 to 10 minutes we did something so you were involved in it and you weren't just falling asleep. The activities are really important, especially if you're doing more than a 7-minute speech. Or again, if there's lots of speeches on, do something. Get them to put their hand up, get them to do something. So we're moving on to, towards the end of it now, delivery. We're looking at a few things as well. You want to smile? Okay, even if you're really nervous, smile, because that relaxes you. And it also relaxes your audience. If they think, oh, she's relaxed here, this is going to be nice. But if they see you really, really nervous, they're going to feel it and they might just start tensing up themselves. So the other thing is to be open. And I don't mean sharing your innermost thoughts with your audience, but it's like, see the space. I want this open. I don't want anything between me and you guys, because that's just going to be an obstacle to us connecting. So you don't want a table, you don't want a big projector. You want to keep the space as open. And to equalise the territory just means that if I'm over here talking to this side, that I don't favour it, that I do also go over this side as well. And I might actually favour this slightly because there's a couple more over this side, but you do want to try and equalise the territory. And if we move on, we've talked about vocal variety and emotion. But we're going to ask you to speak with the emotion that's on the screen. Now, I don't want the content to be particularly sad, so you can say whatever you want, but I want you to evoke sadness for this particular one. They all change. They're all a bit different. So I want to give you a minute just to think about it, to stand up here. You can say something that's really exciting, a really funny story, but I want you, for your emotion, your demeanour, your body language, to be that of sad. Emotions going on there. Cool, and you believed it. Talking about fishing, but I was with you. I was going. So getting your emotion into the stories can really make a big difference as to how your audience perceives it. So well done everybody on doing that. That wraps up this evening. And what I'd like to finish on is remember to smile. Remember to smile at your audience. That is the one thing that's going to connect you to your audience. And smile. When you smile, you can engage with them, connect, and it builds up a bit of trust. So as we go on our own way after tonight, consider taking on some of these points. We look at the eye contact and holding it for more than 5 seconds, or getting your body language to speak to the eyes of your audience, or using your vocal variety to really connect emotionally. And when you evoke emotion, you, lads, awaken thought. Thank you. I should have primed you more. So I have a little ebook that I'm very happy to send on to you. There's some paper at the back. If you want to write your name and an email address, I'll pop it off to you. But I'm going to hand the evening back to Mark. Thank you all very much.